Welcome back, everybody, and to another episode of The Fourth Wave of Therapy. I'm thrilled today to have Mary Sise, who is an absolute pioneer in this area, not only a past president of some of our leading energy psychology bodies, but Mary really does a lot of great work in the psycho-spiritual area, and that's where I want to go deep today. Mary, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's just my joy to be here to speak with you and to share what I found.
Mary, your work really, we talk about the fourth wave of therapy being things that might embrace the body in therapy as well as, obviously cognitive processes. But you've really been at the cutting edge of a kind of another facet, if you like. If we talk about, this whole beautiful diamond having lots of different facets, and I know you've done loads and loads of work in the tapping field, but this other element of introducing or using the concept of spirituality in therapy has been part of what you've written about, part of what you've shared. But what brought you to that? What was it for you? Is that where it started, or is it something that came along?
Well, I could always say I always had a sense of spirituality, of divinity and all that. And actually, a lot of where it began to crash was when traumatic things were happening and I didn't have the answer for the, kind of the why me? Where's God question that everybody struggles with. It could be, for me, it was the death of my sister, leaving two young children. Like, what? Like, what is that? And then, and so it was that's what really flipped me into that, along with working with so many trauma people that had horrible things. And, they'd look and their friends didn't have that. Why me? Why did my dad die? Why did, this happen to my body? Why me? And I really felt like with the tapping, with the newer things we were doing, which was frankly cutting edge, like really 30 years ago. I don't know about you, but I didn't know a meridian from a train track. I didn't know anything, but it was working. But I couldn't get him to the next level, where I could quiet the symptoms down, but I couldn't. And a lot of times nowadays they're talking about trauma as being that you can't do relationships. And what I found is it's because you don't have one with yourself. Because of the trauma, you had to fragment out. A part of you had to stay behind. And so because you don't have a loving relationship with we hate that part, or there's, that part is frozen in time, we could say. We know that about trauma now. And you can't access that yet. And so the work now has really been about bringing that aspect to this aspect, and then everything shifts.
Yeah. And tell me, is this something that naturally kind of evolves in a session with a client where it might be a nice segue for you to introduce it? What happens when you've got a client that perhaps has had this traumatic kind of experience, or even, years worth, but maybe they're not quite open to this idea that perhaps, how do you introduce that to someone?
Well, for starters, you don't. It's very simple. Don't, okay? Because that's spiritual bypass. Well, kumbaya, forget it. Forget about it. Until you've dealt with what happened, you've cleared the traumatic memory, so they're not seeing it, smelling it, reliving it all the time. You go through the regular piece of that, and you especially, I can't tell you, honor the rage that's in them, the violence that is in them from the trauma, versus suppressing that. You have to be a nice girl. Or I can remember, I'm working certainly with people, and I'm sure you have this too, where something really bad, like a sibling dies when you're young, right? And you're thinking, oh my God, God's taking kids these days. I better be a good girl. I can't be angry. I can't be a problem. I have to split off that anger. Nobody can handle it. And so you split that off. But that's an aspect of you that's not accessible. But then, somebody cuts you off in traffic and this rage comes out, or you're screaming at your kid because they're whatever. And yet, oh no, nice people don't do that. So don't go there, spirituality. That is at the end of the work, when the trauma is cleared, when most of them is in present time, when we begin to start making meaning, and how can they serve. And many people, they'll go back to school to be a therapist. There's so many therapists with trauma. I mean, we could just, That's, I think that might be a prerequisite to be a therapist, but I don't really know.
At least to study.
Yeah, I'm just, was your childhood all screwed up? Raise your hand. Okay, you go to the social work school or psych. I like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just teasing, but it, how do I make sense of it? But to try to do that before you've healed all the suppressed emotions, you're just, and then what will happen is the body keeps the score. As Bessel van der Kolk has so beautifully said years ago, he started that. The body will hold it. Then you have contracted energy in the liver, well, anger would be the heart, the liver, the gallbladder, and then you have dis-ease in the body. You see, and so that never works. So don't do the God talk at all. It's spiritual bypass and a bad idea. The idea is, as the therapist, if we're working training therapist, you be the God in the sense of you be unconditional love. That's God. And it can be, it's not an entity in the sky like Santa Claus giving out gifts and for some families and not others, and you teach them how to search for the real meaning of, and how can they make meaning out of, but they have to have done their work. That makes sense.
And yeah, and it sounds like a quite a completion process that, certainly on other episodes here, we've talked about lots of somatic-based tools and things that do help obviously process at that body level, those levels of trauma. But it's almost like it's like a completion process by the sounds of it, where meaning making, you mentioned, coming to some sort of relationship with self around, not only maybe, and I almost kind of think my clinical area being eating disorders, where a lot of those young teens kind of miss certain critical developmental periods because it's stunted with their eating disorder. And it's almost like we're playing catch up here a little bit, isn't it, with maybe personality development, that trauma might be cleared at whenever and whatever age it occurred, but then this relationship with self that maybe didn't develop back in those young years when perhaps, we would have normally seen it as it should have happened then. Is that what this feels like to you as the therapist?
It could be, but oftentimes it's when we look at the hate they have for their bodies, that they don't, maybe not, they're even conscious how much they hate their body. When you want to really look at also how they blame their bodies for what happened. And how they think because of this. I was working with someone with an eating disorder. She said she could remember as a young girl, her mother had very big breasts, and she there was just all this shame around bodies and everything. And she said as a little girl, she prayed every day that her breasts wouldn't develop. So here you're doing all this programming to the body, and then as it began to, she was terrified. And then she hated her body, because then if people looked at her, she blamed her body. So you really want to look at all this fragmented hatred of the body and go. And so what I usually do in the soul weaving process that I have is I take the you of today and I bring it back to the you back there that was really just trying to protect you from being hurt, and blame the body. Children always blame themselves. Why? Because that way there's something to fix.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they get it that this wasn't your fault, now there's no way I can prevent it ever from happening again. So they have to turn it on themselves, because then they have some illusion of control. And then of course, you see the control with the eating. If I can control that, then my body's not going to, then I'm going to be safe, or then this, or I have to be perfect, or whatever. Does that make sense?
100%. And it's almost like this younger aspect or version of ourselves, some modalities call it an echo. It's like that younger version that might still be present and responsible for a lot of behaviors in adult life needs to be heard.
Needs to be loved and reintegrated.
Yeah.
So what I do in soul weaving is we go back, we take the you of today back to the little you. And then we get closer and closer. Now here's where the tapping is just like, as you get closer, you're going to get the fear, the rage, the hate, the whatever. You'll feel it. So then you tap, and you tap for the younger you, until you can come together and merge them with love.
Yeah, nice.
Then you can take this part and say, would you like to see how life turned out? And then you
Ooh,
bring this part forward. This is what we do in soul weaving. Is you bring the part forward and you show them. You skip over the lousy parts. We all have those. But like you show them where, now, and I always say, you got a car and a credit card now. You can drive. You don't have to go anywhere. Like you like kind of grow up the younger part. And then there's a
mm,
piece at the end where they come to today and then they're here. And then boom, consciousness is back fully in the body and energetically in the body, and they're here and they're not in two realities. They're not
yeah.
the child part we had to fragment out is in a different reality. It's like
Mm,
Groundhog Day for that part. Every day is the same day. My body is bad. My this is that or whatever. I'm not safe anywhere. I could die. I could,
yeah. Yeah.
only when something in present time triggers that. Now you have an opportunity to go back. Where did that start? Get curious, loving, go back, get that younger you, and then
Wow.
everything it has to melt. All healing, and this is for me in my zillion years of experience in client, all healing happens in the space of love. So the minute you can go back to that part with love, listening with curiosity, it melts. It has to melt because it's like you go in a dark room, you put the light on, it has to get light. It's energy law. So the problem is most of us hate that part, or we think we blame that part because whatever we didn't know.
Yeah.
You had to
Totally.
you had to make sense. So you come up with a gig or a story around why this happened. Well, it's because blah blah blah. And then
And is it done at a visual level, Mary? Like, is it that someone is visualizing that younger version of themselves, or can it just be a sense of is it just a sense?
you can. Some people have a very hard time visualizing. I don't exactly know the brain processes for that, but usually when I have people tap into it, they can see themselves.
Mm,
They I was working with someone. There they were at their dad's you know, funeral, his wake, just standing there, and just like they're there, and men. So now they have the thing, don't trust men, they leave. You know, so now the adult you can go back and reprogram. You get the fear and the grief and mom's falling apart, so nobody's helping the child, so they have all this grief, and and so they can't express it. They have to suppress that because there's nobody to help you with it. And
yeah.
grandma's whatever she's doing, and so you go back and you allow the tears to happen, the crying to happen, and you tap and you use the energy psychology, the tapping, to quiet down the panic that comes up and the overwhelm. So you titrate that, and then that releases, and then you can explain to the little one he didn't leave you, he died. That's a different thing, and it wasn't your fault, and whatever now to explain to the child that nobody explained. People couldn't
Mm,
talk about it. Makes
yeah.
sense? And then you
And,
walk, and then I do a thing where we walk the child. Are you ready to leave? And I'll show you how life turned out. And the kids are also afraid that mommy will never be the same. You lose mom when something like that happens, or when a trauma happens, or you know,
yeah.
and so you just update, and it's like reprogram to give an update to your computer. Your iPhone has to get updated. Yeah, I update that, come to today. Here's where we are today. Mom's still alive, we have children, whatever. And we will love
Mm,
again. We will be happy again.
mm.
Yeah.
And tell me, what kind of transformation takes place in a client? What does it look like if they obviously go through this process and they get that integration? Is it that, I don't know, they stop doing certain behaviors in their adult life, or
One of the biggest things I see for that empty hole that people walk around with, they just always feel empty
like
inside.
solar plexus, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it's right there. And it's like they'll say to me, I feel full again. I'm here. They're here in present time. They're not in another reality. Now, some people have a lot of parts split off
Yeah.
because of what they went through. And so, you might have to take a little bit longer than them. But for most people, we have some real big ones that you just got to get them in. And then, okay, so now there's more of you here. So now you say you want to do something, it's easier to do because you got more energy here for starters, and you're not in two minds where there's a part of you go, nope, don't do that, or who do you think you are, or all that programming that we got as children. So it just makes life easier. You're like, here, you got enough energy. You say you want to do something and nobody's dragging their feet. And it's easier to get things done and to really create from this space. So it makes Earth a heck of a lot more fun.
Oh, totally. And I'm into making life easy. I think that's just the ultimate, isn't it?
That's
So,
right.
Mary, someone listening in might be kind of wondering or curious, do I have aspects of myself that perhaps, are stuck in time or whatever, even if they can't think of any trauma necessarily, like big T trauma? How would someone know that maybe there are some aspects of themselves that would benefit from a process like soul weaving? What would they notice in their life that would flag that?
Very simple for you. Everybody's got parts left in their childhood.
Okay, well, that's good.
There's no test I got to give you if you score above this, you're a real mess. If you're not, you'll look at your day-to-day life. Is it going smoothly? Do you sabotage yourself? You're a victim. I was working with someone really recently, and he's having panic attacks. His life is great. He's having panic attacks, and he doesn't know what's he's all over. He's a mess, and and whatever, blah blah blah. And it turns out that as he's doing the tapping, and he couldn't figure out where it went to, because a lot of these things are actually pre-verbal, or not pre-verbal. They're more in the unconscious mind. We're not really conscious. Think like an iceberg. If I can bring it to the top where consciousness is, then I can clear it. So there's a couple of things I do. One, I don't go looking for traumas. Okay, I don't make a list of every stupid thing that happens to me. Okay. I wait. The universe will send me somebody who will trigger it. They'll push my buttons. They didn't install them, but they pushed them. Okay. So now I'm ready to rip their face off, and I have to go put duct tape on my mouth and go inside. Where does this go? And trace it. You trace the energy back. And then all of a sudden, if you really are curious, something will pop in your head. And for this panic attack, I said to him, did you have an asthma attack? What are you afraid of dying? He's afraid of dying. Okay. Well, what is this? And a panic attack is a whole nother trauma in and of itself, because you think you're going to die. No, it wasn't that. He didn't have asthma. I said, he's trapped. He has this trap thing. And sure enough, he did some rounds of tapping on his own. And what came into his memory was I think he was like 8 when his cousin died, who was like 10. And he saw her in the wake.
Oh, like in the coffin or something, like a trapped sensation.
And everybody's in shock, all grieving and upset, and it froze it's a shock to the brain. Then that's in there. Of course, you suppress it. And but that was a defining moment. So for most of us, we have certain defining moments that we can tap into. But even if you don't, the best thing to do is to just do your tapping, learn tapping. The whole planet needs to know tapping. Do your tapping, and then just ask, how old do I feel, or what, and see what pops in. And then go find yourself. Go find your little girl. Just what do you wish somebody said to you? What do you need right now? And then come on. Get out of here, and then you can do a whole thing. I mean, it's really not that complicated to do, but you have to link it, because it's not in today. Most of the things we're upset about aren't that upsetting in today. When you start looking like nutty to all your like, oh, she's overreacting. That's a clue you're in the past.
Yes, yeah.
You want to go, where am I? Where have I felt this way before? And nobody helped me. It was too much for me to handle as a little kid.
Yeah, I like that question. Spin on how old do I feel right now? Like that kind of, because even if an age pops into your mind, you could trace that. Yeah.
And you could also how many you wrote, know how to get yes or no answers from the body, like be a human pendulum. Something happened under the age of 5. Yes, something. What is it? Now, don't ask crazy questions like, I was abused. Don't do that to yourself. If you were abused, that will come to your mind when it's time. Okay. Yeah. The other thing I would caution you about, you and I can pick up an end table, but I can't pick up my dining room table. If there's been damage to your body, you want to be working with somebody else, a clinician. You want somebody there. It won't get really revealed to you until, I shouldn't say that, because sometimes something really flashes back and you are like, oh my God. Or you're in a war, you had violence in the house. Get somebody to help you with that. But get somebody who's trained in trauma treatment, especially in tapping or EMDR. Those are 2 of my favorites. Don't
Yeah.
go to, it's like going to a pediatrician for a heart transplant. Okay. Don't do that if you've
Yeah.
had damage to your body, because that's where you're going to see more where consciousness leaves the body. Okay. The other
Mm.
group I'm having a lot of fun doing this with are people who've had near death experiences. Because what happens is they go over and they're in the oneness, or some of the people who are doing all the psychedelics these days, they don't
Yeah.
want to come back. So consciousness doesn't come all the way back. And then they go through life with this ambivalence. Do I want to be here? I don't really want to be here. I really want to be there. I don't want to be, you know. And so once you bring that all the way back, now you have enough energy to do life rather than to have a foot in two worlds. This is
Wow.
really having a boat. You can't get your boat to go,
It's so interesting because I met Anita Mojani. She happened to
Yep.
come out on a book tour to Australia. If anyone hasn't read Dying to Be Me, have a look at her book. We'll make sure it's in the link in the notes. But I stood next to her, and obviously she describes her near-death experience and in kind of miraculous recovery from cancer and things like that. The presence standing next to her, I didn't want to leave. It was so profoundly peaceful, and I was just standing there and she was signing my book. And I'm like, I totally can relate to what you're saying, because I thought, if you'd had that experience, why would you want to come back?
Exactly.
So I've never thought of that NDEs perhaps may have that kind of conflict of, my goodness, wherever I went to versus making the choice to come back here and not
Right.
fully having both feet back on earth.
Exactly. But many times they don't come all the way back. So then they can't really do it. Okay. What they came to do. Now, where you want to be is fully embodied. You want to bring that, and she's brought back a lot of it, and she may have all of it back. I don't know. But that peaceful, and embody that. Then when you can embody that, then you emanate it. And everybody that comes in your space, that's why you didn't want it's an attractor field. You didn't want to leave it. It's just like, oh my God, her heart is open. And masters are like that. When you work with a master, that's why people go to India to get Shaktipat. That's what that is. It's an attractor field of peace and grace. And you can't explain it. It's like, you just know you don't want to leave. But like, especially if I worked with someone once who, as a little girl, was in a car accident, and it was before seatbelts. She went through the car front window, and her father ran over her. So picture that scene. Then she dies. She's gone. She's out, and he is sobbing. And so she came back in, but she didn't come all the way back in. So anyway, she had to go through all this hospital. So she was like an 8-year-old, or very young. But she didn't come all the way back. And anyway, blah, blah, blah. When she came to me, she was probably in her late 50s.
Oh, wow.
She had immune system. She had MS. She wasn't fully here. She had always high achiever, like, that kind of person, And we went back and we got the accident, and I took her back to her with the tire track over her, and then we got her, the part of her that didn't come back, and we had to coax that part back into the body, move it forward, move it up to today, and her MS got better.
Wow.
Right, because she has enough energy. Immune is first chakra, right? So she wasn't fully in, you see, and then that got better. Go figure.
Wow. Well,
it's just fascinating. And to me, this is the next level of it, like really looking at consciousness and trauma and how consciousness fragments out. Frankly, it's not new. It's very shamanic in the old days, whatever. Just like, how do we do it without, how do we do it and get insurance reimbursement? Maybe is the better thing.
Yeah.
But how do we do this in a way that people get themselves back and they get their lives back? And then the body does better and everything does better, and they can really do what you came to the planet to do during this time on the planet. This is a very critical time on the planet. And all the souls that are here, there's certainly that are probably listening to this or in our sphere, you came here for a reason. It's not easy to get in here. And there was something you wanted to be here. So let's get all of you here. So in the now, so we can do what we came to do in the first place.
It prompts me to want to ask, is chronic health illness some sort of clue that perhaps maybe, so if you're talking people in their 50s and 60s, and obviously we've got research around ACEs and things like that, is chronic illness might be a sign perhaps that there's parts that, maybe stuck in another time.
Yes, I would say yes. First chakra especially. First chakra is all about your immune system. So when you've had trauma, as you know, your immune system is just like you're always on hyper alert. You can't settle down. You have no faith.
Yeah, it's that grounding, isn't it?
And so your first chakra, which is, you're supposed to have a traumatic response, then repair. But you can't repair because it's so shocking. The brain gets a shock, and you always are hypervigilant. You're checking everything out. You worry. You're always like, you're not in this moment because it's too terrifying, you say. And so there's part of you that's also still in the trauma. So you don't have enough energy here to keep health is all about coherent energy and harmony. So you don't have enough here to make it work. And then, now I have a chronic disease. God really must be mad at me. Or then poor God gets blamed for everything around here. But, versus, no, you just don't have enough energy here. You're not all the way here. Let's get you back and fix it. Yeah.
Wow. Mary, we've got all your details here in the show notes anyway, but if someone was like, one, I'm a clinician and I want to learn this soul weaving process, is that something that is open to people to come and learn, to use with clients?
Yes. I'm actually, there's a whole bunch of things in motion right now. I don't have it. But one of the things I love everybody to do, I do something called Tapping Tuesday. Now, I don't know where that is in Australia time, but it's Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't know what that will be in your time.
It'll be the next day. We'll work out the time zones for everyone.
It's called Tapping Tuesday. I started doing it for the pandemic because I was like, how could I know this tool and not share it with everybody? And I made it free, and it's every Tapping Tuesday. I've been doing it now for 4 years. I can't stop myself. 4 years since the pandemic. I had so much fun. People come from all over the world. You drop in when you want to come in. There's usually 100 or so people on it, and we all tap some people, and I work with them. Everybody taps. Everybody has a healing. So if you want to see what I do, and anybody can come on that. Bring your friends. I don't care. But you can put whatever name you want to be. Nobody cares. And it's really fun. So there's that. And then I have a mentorship program. So if people want to learn, especially if you're a clinician, I want to learn how to do this. I want to take, work on that. It's not even just trauma. All your clients will do better if you can figure out where they're stuck and link things and then heal them. So
that is brilliant.
And then I'm in the process of writing another book or a book on that. And so
excellent. And we've got your existing books there below as well. So Tapping Tuesdays, everybody, make sure the link is there. Anyone listening in, go and check it out and see what it's like. And then if you want to follow through on that mentorship, absolutely. And I'm guessing, Mary, if people listening in want to use it for themselves, you might have a range of practitioners that are trained that you could recommend.
And the book that I'm writing, it will be for the general public because there's so much. We got to get this stuff out to the world. There aren't enough practitioners to serve you. That being said, if you've had damage to your body, work with a practitioner. That's my recommendation.
Goes without saying. That's right.
Be kind to yourself. Don't do that to your body. If there's been really violence to you. But a lot of these things, like there was something you saw. There's a difference if you see a car accident versus you're in one. Okay, so it's something you saw or something somebody said to you that just stuck in your brain and shocked you, and you can't seem to get past it. And there's so much we can do for ourselves now. This is a very energetically powerful time on the planet. So jump in, but you can't just blah blah talk about it. You gotta do the energy work around it. Find the energy, and then use the tapping and bring yourself home.
Brilliant. Well, make sure we're going to get you back when that book comes out so we can unpack it a bit further.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks so much for your time, Mary. Look forward to another conversation soon.
Love it.